Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm super glad you're here. So I wanted to spend a little time chatting about mutually assured destruction, also known as MAD. Since we have a bit of a conflict, I guess you could say, and the potential for all-out war over in Russia and Ukraine, we have to consider the possibility of nuclear disaster. And MAD, or mutually assured destruction, is a policy or a strategy, really. And proponents of MAD argue that if there were a nuclear war, all nations would destroy each other, and therefore they will never actually pull the trigger. So mutually assured destruction implies that we are safe from nuclear attack because no lunatic would be foolish enough to pull the trigger and destroy everyone. Because of MAD policies, there's a very influential minority of people in the government who would resist the development of defenses against nuclear attack, because they believe that such defense would accelerate the arms race and lead to mutually assured destruction. So these types of influencers would rather see us make weapons that kill people instead of weapons that defend ourselves against nuclear attack. They would prefer that our development of nuclear weapons stays underfunded and really, really small. Now, interestingly, I've been reading this book called Nuclear War Survival Skills, which was written in about 1987. Actually, it was written in like 1984 by the Oak Ridge National Defense Laboratory, and then it was republished again with a little bit more information and maybe some different added perspectives to it by this author. Kearney is his name. So anyways, this book suggests that our best civil defense is basic preparations and basic knowledge, because there is an incredibly high chance that we will survive a nuclear attack. And they argue that MAD is, well, for lack of a better term, an insane policy. Another interesting fact is that Russia never adopted MAD. They took a pretty hard hit after World War II and the Cold War, and so they never adopted this policy where they aren't going to spend time and effort researching nuclear defense capabilities under the assumption that it's worthless. That's the key to MAD policy, is that it doesn't matter how much preparations you make, all life on Earth will be wiped out. The planet will be uninhabitable. But that's actually a myth. And hopefully I'd like to make a series of videos that kind of look into this book a little bit more so that we can explore some of these myths and see the facts behind them. Some facts which are pretty daunting truths, but it's nowhere near the full-scale annihilation that proponents of MAD suggest. So here's a fun little thing. I'm not very tech savvy, but I got on Reddit about a month ago, and I put a post up about how mutually assured destruction policy actually only assures our own destruction. And like, I got so many downvotes. I was so surprised at how demoralized and psychologically defeated these people were. It was on like a survivalist type of a Reddit page, and I just got so many comments about how the scorched earth theory, just destroy all life. If nuclear war broke out, nothing would survive. Then anything that did survive would be contaminated with fallout. And then anything that could survive the fallout would, burn in fire, or just all these sorts of ideas. And every single person was arguing that I was a fool for suggesting that a MAD policy is inappropriate. But the Russians never adopted MAD policy. So they have actually 20 times more of a bigger budget in their nuclear civil defense than we do, per capita. So, interestingly, they have fallout shelters, food storages for their citizens. They have evacuation plans. They have civil defense, military on standby, ready to initiate post-war recovery procedures. They have safeguards for their industry, food, transportation. We have, as of when it was written in 1987, our civil defense policy against a nuclear attack is so minuscule, it's pennies per person per year. It may have gone up since then. I didn't research that. Maybe suddenly we have decided that MAD is not the way to go, but it doesn't appear that way, especially the way the news media talks about a nuclear attack. The truth is, they have succeeded in psychologically demoralizing the population to believe that they cannot survive a nuclear attack, and so they do not prepare, which is a really nasty trick, if you ask me. I would like to go through it, like I said, a series of videos that explain what you need to do to prepare to survive a nuclear attack. So one myth is that the fallout, so anyone that could survive the blast, the fallout would kill them. But it's incredibly not true. So yes, if you're exposed to about 450 R is a term for measuring gamma ray and other types of radiation exposure. So if you have 450 R in within 1 hour, half of the people exposed to that level of radiation died within a few days. So it's not a guaranteed kill. If you were directly within wind of a major nuclear explosion, and you let that fall out. So what is fallout? Let me explain that real quick. Fallout is when the fireball hits the ground and churns up trillions of particles of Earth, which are then contaminated with radioactive atoms. And they go up into the sky, and those radioactive atoms irradiate those dust particles, and then they get caught in the wind, and then they can travel for miles. You can even travel across the entire Pacific Ocean. Like if there was a nuclear attack in Russia, we would have exposure here in America. But it actually dies out pretty quickly. So if somehow there was a nuclear explosion, I survived the blast, and I drove my car directly to where the blast site was, I would be exposed to about 1,000 R per hour, which means I would die within the same day if I was exposed to that level of radiation. But 1 hour after that, it's nearly cut in half to only 500 R. And then after 7 hours, it drops down to about 24 R per hour. Okay, so bear with me. Let's say there's a nuclear bomb. It explodes trillions of tons of dust particles up into the air, and those slowly come down. And then 7 hours later, I drive to that site. I can actually withstand that level of radiation. I could stand there for a whole hour, and it wouldn't kill me. I would get exposed to about 25 R per hour, and that would be, if I stayed for a whole hour, I'd only get mild radiation sickness. So that's how this works. It's kind of logarithmically reduced, or it's exponentially reduced over time. So then if I, up to 48 hours later, so if I come to the blast site after 2 days, I would be exposed to 10 R per hour, which means I could actually work and do life-saving labor for about 2 or 3 hours and still be fine. So this is the myth. The myth is that the fallout will kill us all instantly, or kill everything. But the truth is, the fallout in the direct area immediately after the blast will be extremely devastating. But several days after the blast, the fallout will be incredibly diminished and survivable. So another thing is the gamma ray exposure. Gamma rays are a little bit like X-rays. And even if you had a blast shelter, even like top-notch, top-of-the-line blast shelter, you could survive with probably about as much radioactive exposure as you would get in a lifetime of receiving X-rays. And that's because the gamma rays can't penetrate densely packed material. For instance, I'm going to throw some numbers at you. The gamma ray penetration of a 1 megaton bomb, so assuming you're not in the immediate blast explosion, and you are under just 2 feet of earth. That's it, 2 feet of packed soil between you and the direct exposure to the gamma rays, you would be A-okay. Then, so literally you could just, with enough manpower, you could just shovel yourself a tiny little shelter. And if you've got a moderate food storage and water, food and water underneath there, you would be set. In about 2 weeks, you could emerge and begin salvaging things. You could begin life-saving labor and procedures. You could begin to rebuild in 2 weeks after the explosion. If you're really, really close to the blast site, you're going to need some kind of instrument to measure radioactivity. In this book is a way to make that instrument with household items from 1987. There's like a coffee can and maybe some like carbon paper and things like that. And I'm going to explore how to build that. And I think it'd be really fun if I made a video of that. Anyway, so the idea is that you can survive nuclear war. A nuclear explosion will not kill us all, and it's very important that we spread this information. Adoption of mad, mutually assured destruction policy will only assure our own death. It is a suicide policy for lunatics. And unfortunately, they've convinced the majority of Americans that that's the only true case, that it will be the outcome of events. But it's not true. Like I said, the Russians know it's not true, and so they're ready for it. They will rebuild rapidly, quickly, after a nuclear attack. And so can we. We just have to get it out there. So, thank you so much for being here. That'll conclude my video for the day. I don't actually have Facebook or any kind of social media except Reddit, I guess. But if you would like to share this video for me and do some legwork, that would be awesome. And then we can get more and more views, and I'll make more videos about nuclear war survival. Have a great day.